All right, Ryota, over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the World Movement for Democracy's Facebook Live. The World Movement for Democracy is a global network of democracy activists, human rights defenders, practitioners, like members of parliament, and representative donor community to come together to advance democracy around the world. We empower democracy movements around the world in the three main thematic areas: defending civil society, building inclusive governance, and cultivating next generation democratic leaders. In March 2020, the World Movement for Democracy launched a new project called Crossover Initiative, which seeks to empower young activists and provide them with practical tools to cross over from civil society activism to governance and push reforms within the government after a major political transition. To learn more about this project, please visit our website, movedemocracy.org. And today, this intergenerational conversation aims to share successful strategy and discuss importance and effectiveness of crossing over into government in the past and the present. I personally look forward to learning from this conversation. As you take part in this conversation, please share your comments and the questions on our Facebook page. Our moderator will be posing some of these questions during the Q&A. Now, I'm so delighted to introduce a moderator of this conversation Damon Wilson. Damon is the president and the CEO of the National Endowment of Democracy, NED. Prior to joining NED, he was executive vice president of Atlantic Council in Washington, D.C. He is a crossover himself. He started a professional life working with NGO Save the Children in Rwanda. Then he joined the government to develop and implement policies to advance democracy in different places. He has worked at the National Security Council in the US, as well as the US State Department. So Damon, thank you very much for agreeing to moderate this conversation. And the floor is yours now.
Thank you so much, Ryota. Thank you. It is such a pleasure to be with all of you today. Welcome to our Facebook Live. I'm honored to be part of this World Movement for Democracy. And if we ever needed that, we need it now. Here at the endowment, we are looking at a real challenging situation out there for democracy and freedom. And we're not wringing our hands or being concerned about it. We're understanding that we need an offense in favor of freedom. We need a spirit of democratic renewal. And to do that, we need to learn from those who have carved the way, who have paved the way through their leadership and their courage, like President Ramos Horta, who is with us today, but also to inspire those that are going to carry that baton, carry that forward. And that's why we have an intergenerational discussion today, because it is clear that the future of democracy and freedom is going to depend on activists and civil society taking charge, their agency, helping to lead the way. And that is the premise of this crossover initiative. A crossover initiative in that those who cut their teeth in civil society and activism take charge politically to help shape the destiny of their own countries. And for me, as Ryota said, this is personal. It's really personal. I grew up and my career began in civil society. It actually, before Save the Children, it started in the Balkans. When I worked for the Unaccompanied Children in Exile Project, an extraordinary NGO that brought together those from across the Western Balkans, across countries, across ethnicities and religions, all around the cause of trying to help unaccompanied children, orphan children, find their parents, be connected to family in the wake of the war. I went to work for Save the Children in Rwanda after that. And from there in Rwanda, I went to work for the White House, handling African policy, African affairs through a whole government career. Now I am back in civil society. And so we're going to turn to this conversation. We've got three extraordinary guests. Jose Ramos Horta is the former president, of course, of Timor-Leste, the current chairperson of the World Movement for Democracy's steering committee, and we thank him for that service. He's had a remarkable, inspirational career. During 24-year occupation of his country, he worked in exile as a leading voice of East Timorese independence movement, promoting peaceful dialogue. And for his work, he received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1996. This is an extraordinary example of someone whose activism leading to government service. He's joined by two extraordinary colleagues from Bosnia-Herzegovina. Magdalena Vucina is a lawyer, political activist. She currently works in a law office in Mostar, a member of the Croatian Democratic Union of Bosnia and Herzegovina, a board member on education and youth politics in the youth wing of the party. She's a member of the Beautiful City European Law Students Association and a member of the policy committee of the Advanced Leadership and Politics Institute, ALPI, an extraordinary program backed by one of our core institutes, the International Republican Institute. Timur Vilic is with her here, and he's the president of the Youth Forum Naša Strana, our party in the Sarajevo canton. He's also a master's student at the University of Sarajevo and been very active in political movements, particularly in policy advocacy, also participating in LPI's program. So I want to start, I think I want to start with Jose Ramos Horta, if I may, to give us a sense of what really inspired you to get active in civic movement and civic protest, and what motivated you to go from activism into government, foreign minister, defense minister, prime minister, and president. Mr. President, please.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure, privilege to join you in this conversation. I will try to be succinct. Well, sometimes in our lives, we do not plan exactly what we are going to do. In circumstances like ours, our convictions on freedom, on justice, are the determining force for what we are going to do. I didn't have much of an ideology inspiring me, although I was always, throughout my life till today, a social democrat, center-left maybe, I would define myself. But I would not be inspired either by, I'm not motivated, when I fight for freedom, I'm not motivated by ideology, left or right. I'm not motivated by religion, so circumstances force on us. And then you have to, of course, and you are not trained to fight, particularly at a young age, you are not trained in our circumstances, but also in a more or less a normal situation where there is no military occupation or there is no dictatorship. You are in a more or less established function democracy. If you're in a function democracy like in Western Europe, I remember meeting some young leaders in the socialist parties in Europe, or some members of parliament, relatively young. Well, they had opportunity, to learn about politics and governance and so on. Not me and not my colleagues. Some took up arms, went to the mountains, the caves, the jungles, underground to fight. No time to study, no time to prepare for governance. And we fought till the bitter end, 24 years. Then negotiations happened, resolution of the conflict, referendum, we won, and we then thrust upon us to run the country, to manage the affairs of the country. Well, we didn't have much preparation for that. So we have been learning on the job since independence, already 20 years since independence. We have been perfecting each year. So, and age, we have aged, my generation, we age in the struggle, then we age in the job, and then now we see young generation leaders in my country, in the parliament, in government. Some even have reached position of prime minister. People are relatively from the new generation. But when I was abroad, I was representing more or less at the United Nations in New York and different parts of the world. Well, I learn and learn and learn. I learn about the United Nations. I learn about the US Congress. I know the US Congress reasonably well. I can drop names, people I met over the years, but I also went to Harvard. Went to Harvard to learn about foreign. I did a program called Leaders in Development.
Yep.
So to prepare me. So anyway, I stopped here for a while. I don't want to take too long.
Thank you, Mr. President, for sharing that sort of origin story. I think it really matters what drives people. So I want to turn, you're joining us from Dili, from Timor-Leste. I want to turn to Magdalena and Timor. You're joining us from Mostar, from Sarajevo, respectively. And in Bosnia and Herzegovina, there's a real challenge where many young people feel disenfranchised, disinterested in government. In fact, I suspect you've got many of your friends who have left Bosnia seeking opportunity outside the country. What has motivated you to remain in your country and to get involved in politics and in a political party? Magdalena, can we start with you from Mostar, please? Please unmute yourself, Magdalena, please.
Okay. During my school time days, I volunteered. I was member of more organizations, and I organized more practices and conferences and other. But I realized that the political activists can do more than a volunteer. Politics activities are decision makers, and they can create safe space for everyone. They keep a contact with the representative of government, city mayor, conciliars, and volunteers must do more job better and know your role in society. Political activities are in government and they have the power to decision maker, but volunteers and political activities can create beautiful stories and better future for us.
Thank you for that, Magdalena. I want to turn to Timor. Timor, what has prompted you to become active in politics and to fight the battle at home in your country?
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to join today. It is a great honor, obviously, to be here with you and with Mr. President and to share our story on how we are trying to make Bosnia and Herzegovina a better place. For me, it was the pandemic was the trigger. Before that, I always followed politics. I was very involved. I watched on the television, the news. I had friends in politics, so I was very involved. But I never wanted to, as they say, get my hands dirty. But then at one point during the pandemic, I was on I was on an exchange program. I was studying in Croatia, and I saw that my country cannot do anything for me. I feel as if a person without a homeland. So I decided to use what I have, the skills I have, even though it might not be that much, use the energy that I have, the free time, and to try to give it, to give myself to my country and to people around me, so others wouldn't have to experience what I experienced. And that is kind of what's been guiding me through all of this, to be the change that I want to see in the world. And it might sound cliche, but I think that it is actually a very concrete idea that has very, very big impact on the society as a whole.
Timor and Magdalena, often people say, wait your time, bid your time, be patient. Why do you think youth activism and youth engagement in politics and governance is important to getting it right? Timor and then Magdalena.
Well, I personally believe that youth has fresh ideas. We are creative. We've been born into this world, and we know it much better than our parents or the generations before do. They are still kind of living in a world that maybe doesn't even exist anymore. We have the situation is very specific. We don't have, especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's you live kind of day for day. So I believe that it is very important for the youth to be involved into processes, to give their ideas, so we can maybe preemptively act on some things which the generations before us maybe aren't conditioned to expect.
It's helpful, Timur. Magdalena, why do you see the value of youth engagement in politics?
We are a new generation of people, and we have fresh ideas, and we only can make a better future in this country because we can work together, and we must invest in our education and our country and our local community. And we must be patient, more patient, and result can back.
Thank you, Magdalena. So, Mr. President, this is part of our crossover initiative. And if there is anybody that exemplifies that, it is you, someone who is a leader in the community and the exile movement, in essentially a really activated civil resistance, civil society, crossing over into governance. What lessons did you learn when you were running a civil movement that applied to leadership in government?
I was always, from my youth, pragmatic. And that was my instinct, to be pragmatic, to be realistic. And my advice is always study, study, and study. Equip yourself with knowledge. And use your brains. Don't use your emotions. Be patient. Patient in the sense of study the circumstances around you, the obstacles, the strengths, the weaknesses, and then you move when you can move. If there is a huge obstacle ahead of you, don't try to bang your head into the obstacle. Stop, study how you can overcome the obstacle. Jump over the fence, go sideways, or find some other. Build alliances. But build alliance by being humble, being smart, being creative, being moderate. Extremism of any sort, whether faith, ideology, will lead you nowhere. You have to be intelligent, creative, to build, to learn, to study, to build alliance, to build network, because we are not alone in this world. So what I did, and I believe I did more successfully, was not only network in the UN around the world, but I understood in the 70s and 80s, power rests in Washington, for good and for bad. So I spent countless years, countless hours in Washington to try to get the US government, US administration. And this happened when Clinton became president, Bill Clinton became president. That was the beginning of the changes for us. But it took many other senators, many congressmen, Democrats, Republicans, who were converted to the Timur cause, before Clinton came. Of course, there were changes in Indonesia and elsewhere. But one thing that has been successful in our history, in our case, is that we never demonize the other side. The other side was majority Muslims in Indonesia. We majority Catholic. We never demonize Muslims. We never demonize Indonesians as a people, demonize them. We fought. And then when circumstances allow for negotiated settlement of the problem, we negotiated, led by the United Nations and our main leader, Xanana Gusmão. And today, Little Timor-Leste, predominantly Catholic, we are 98% Catholic. Indonesia, the largest Muslim nation in the world, 270 million people. We have the best possible relationship of any two countries in the world. And that has to do with the leadership. leadership that is wise, that is humble, but that is creative, that is pragmatic, and so on. Because you can have all your convictions, but others also have their convictions. So anyway, I stop here. Sorry.
Mr. President, those are wise words. Knowledge, equip yourself with knowledge. Be motivated by ideals, but be pragmatic. And at the end of the day, this really reflects the caliber of leadership. And Timor-Leste has been blessed with your leadership and others. And I think that's one of the challenges in Bosnia today, is an issue of leadership and being practical. So that's partly why we're spotlighting this. Both Magdalena and Timur have been involved in the Advanced Leadership and Politics Institute, which is a great effort that one of our partners, the International Republican Institute, is really helping to support, which brings idealists, people who are motivated by ideals, but to be pragmatic and realistic. And so I want to ask Magdalena, maybe start with you first, about this concept of how do you bring practical proposals that show democracy delivers, that it responds to people's, to citizens' interests, so that politics is not some game of power, but it's actually trying to deliver for local communities. What steps are you taking to help local governments address the main concern of your generation, which is essentially a brain drain problem, people leaving the country due to a lack of opportunity? Magdalena? Magdalena, please, over to you.
Thank you. Can you reply, please, the question for me?
Yes, Magdalena. What steps are you taking to help local governments in Bosnia and Herzegovina address the main concern of your generation, which is economic opportunity, a lack of economic opportunity, which is leading to brain drain? What kind of specific steps are you advocating and pushing for to address that challenge?
Okay. One of my close friends is living in the USA, and now she's very successful person at what she does. Some to 1,000 euro per who one person lives Bosnia and Herzegovina. We must stop the brain drain in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we talked, we have training with Georgia, and we decided to start with project about business hubs. Why business hubs? Because all people, whatever who were can work in business hubs, and we will finish this document at the end of the year.
Thank you. And Timur, if I'm not mistaken, I think you've worked with Magdalena a little bit on a concept of a business incubator to provide opportunities for young Bosnia Herzegovinans. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to work together across communities and parties on something that is really committed to supporting the next generation? Timur.
Yes, of course. So we are, as a part of this program, we come from many different political parties and from different ideological backgrounds. But we come together to work on questions which are important for everyone. You know, Magdalena was talking about the situation in Bosnia. It is, for years, you know, they tried to present some, if I may call them cosmetic issues, as the main issues of Bosnia and Herzegovina. But we don't believe that those are the main issues that face us. We believe that it is the everyday things, the problems that we all face, the business situation, which is awful and because of which the youth is leaving, and the security situation. They don't have security. Young people don't have the security they need to start families, to plan their lives ahead, you know, to say, where I want to be in 5 years. You don't know what's going to happen in 7 days. So we started talking about the idea of how to help young people who have decided to stay, to start their lives, to have at least that financial security, to help them, create what they imagine, to help them realize their ideas in their own country. We are currently still, as Magdalena said, working on the policy. We are doing research also, and we are collaborating inside as a team, using everyone's expertise, because we have people from different walks of life, to better the situation for everyone. And after we keep people here, there's going to be a deal about the cosmetic issues. So it's most important to have the livelihood secure, and then we can have our ideological differences maybe in some better times.
That's a pragmatic leadership, Timur, Magdalena. We're getting some questions that are coming in over Facebook, so I want to encourage those that are following along. Please feel free to send in your questions. I will get to them in just a minute. But I want to come back to President Ramos-Horta, because part of this is what we're talking about is, how do you show democracy delivers? Today, people are questioning, they're looking at authoritarian powers, and they're wondering, can democracy actually deliver? Is it the best pathway for citizens? And in your memoir, which I encourage everyone to read, Words of Hope in Troubled Times, you talk about freedom dividends. I think that's an important concept, freedom dividends, in which society can gain better access to healthcare, economic opportunities, electricity. Can you talk a little bit about how do you see the ability of democracy to deliver freedom dividends today, when many are looking at COVID and others, and they're wondering, is democracy the best form to deliver for its people? Mr. President, you're on mute, sir.
Democracy is not perfect. No path democracy, maybe only in Scandinavian countries. They are almost perfection in Norway, Finland, Sweden, etc. But the rest, democracies, we have setbacks. Look at the United States and the challenges, the troubles, brought, that we witness in the United States, but also in Europe, in UK, in the new emerging democracies in Eastern Europe, like Hungary. But I would say, I'm always cool or pragmatic to watch this thing without the drama of we are also listening to cataclysmic predictions on the end of democracy, the end of history. Well, no, there are setbacks at some time or another in history, but there has been yet no better system than democracy, because it means freedom of choice, freedom of expression. And those demagogues of the extreme left or extreme right that promise easy solutions, well, in the end, very short period of time, after only a few months, few years, they have not delivered, and they will be out. Well, look at the enormous trouble that Boris Johnson is facing in UK with the Brexit, as if Brexit would resolve all British problems. Well, look at the problems now. So these are temporary challenges. Of course, there is time necessary for reflection of the democratic movements, democratic regimes, how better, first, to connect with the people, the bureaucracies of multilateral institutions, regional bodies, the elites in power, how to connect with the people, how to connect with the youth. Of course, youth, I hear all the time, we must empower the youth, we must empower the youth. Well, I was youth too, we were youth, we also had dreams. We realized some, we didn't realize others. And but what is absolutely necessary is that those in power to deliver the best possible education to our youth, because only through the best education, tailored for the realities, the challenge of 21st century, of the global digital age, of artificial intelligence, and of 5G, 6G, to address what is coming in this 21st century. The best education to enable the poorest of the poor in our third world countries to move out of extreme poverty and be able also to be makers of economy, makers of health. And and we have an opportunity for that. What disappoints me is with the pandemic, I haven't heard from the United States, I haven't heard from the European Union or Japan, any imaginative strategy, roadmap to mobilize the goodwill of the world, the best scientists of the world, the wealthiest people of the world, into some sort of a global Marshall Plan to address public health issues, extreme poverty, clean water, and so on. This is what's lacking in this today's world. I don't see it from the United States, I don't see it from Europe. COVID should have woken up us as a human family, mobilized the resources for the betterment of everybody, particularly those living on the periphery in Africa, Asia, Latin America, but also the periphery in Europe. There are millions in Europe who are on the periphery of wealth. In the United States, too many millions are on the periphery of chances, of opportunities.
So, Mr. President, that's a really compelling message. I want to connect this with something that we received, a question that's come in over Facebook, because you dealt with this challenge in Timor-Leste, and we see it in spades in Bosnia today, Bosnia-Herzegovina. How do you tackle the problem of weak institutions that support democracy? And you've talked about leadership. We've seen leadership for good and bad. But what about the institutions that are so fundamental to democracy being able to deliver? How do you think about fostering that? What was your experience in Timor-Leste? How should our rising leaders in Bosnia be thinking about the institutional capabilities to support democracy?
Well, we have to first create the conditions of peace. In our country, we launched a deep process of national healing, national reconciliation. We built bridges with Indonesia, with all our neighbors. We did not allow the past, the ugly parts of the past, to dominate our present and our future. We are not hostages to the tragedies of the past. We cannot forget the past. We honor our victims, but we must move on. That's first, because without conditions of peace, in a fragile country like Bosnia-Herzegovina, like in Timor-Leste, like in the Middle East, well, there is no future if we don't reach out and forgive and reconcile community, divided community. You have to start being creative, being generous, being compassionate, being wise to deliver, to involve people, to engage people, to embrace people, particularly when you are in multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multicultural societies. Don't make any community feel that they are excluded. You have to embrace everyone and embrace sincerely. And that's how there is no other way. There are no tricks, smart tricks to avoid that. And it's possible. I see from here, when we are not terribly, my country, we are not terribly efficient. You know, we are a new country, 20 years, we don't do everything well, but we have zero political violence, zero anti-Protestant, anti-Muslim sentiment, or anti some foreign ethnic communities who are here. No, zero. Of course, our parliament is weak. You know, there are too many political parties. You know, the democracy is almost hijacked by people who just want a job and so on. But still, the state, the country deliver. If we compare with what my country was 20 years ago and what is today, life expectancy increased by more than 12 years, almost 15 years. And before 20 years ago, we had only 20 medical doctors for the whole country, for 1.3 million people. Now we have over 1,000 medical doctors and spread in every community around the country. So we have delivered, not enough. Our institutions are still weak. The judiciary is weak, but also is the legislative institutions are weak. But it is a process. We are only 20 years. And there are countries much older than us in a much, much worse situation in terms of the democratic institutions that sustain our democracy, that the institutions that deliver. We are working on that still.
Terrific, terrific. I want to come back to Magdalena and Timur, because one of the things the president had recommended was study, knowledge, skills, be prepared, use this time wisely. And this is part of what you've been investing in yourselves with other political leaders through the Leadership Institute. What would you say are the skills that you're developing that you find really important to be effective political leaders in Bosnia? And Magdalena, maybe you first and then Timur?
Okay. I am team leader of policy committee, and I learned to motivate other people, other youth people. I have more brave to decide about something, create reality, follow the project. Alpi teach us that we can accept differences and make better stories together.
Terrific, terrific, Magdalena. And Timur, let me specify, we had a question coming in from Paul McCarthy about how do you think of what are the best strategies for young political party members to have an impact inside their parties?
Well, speaking from experience, I believe that the best way is to prove yourself, to work hard, and you're going to get noticed very soon, because here, especially when it comes to youth, there is the pool of youth from which political parties can take people is not that big. So you have people, you have political parties basically fighting around the handful of young, high quality young people who have stayed in Bosnia. So I believe that by investing in yourself, primarily into by investing into ourselves, primarily into our education, which I'm personally still planning to do even more, because there is never enough knowledge. You make yourself attractive to these parties, and they are going to listen to you because you have creativity, you have fresh new ideas, you have the energy that they need, especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where situation is specific in that there is this kind of apathy in the air, where people are not very motivated to even try anymore, because they've been trying for 25 years and nothing they tried succeeded. I believe there is a way. We just need to wake up one day and decide that we want to accept change, and that we are ready to become better ourselves. I think that we have a problem of not being ready to let go of the past. And that is why the words of Mr. President, previous words, hit so hard here. If it's a very applicable for Bosnia and Herzegovina, what Mr. President said. So I'm very glad to have heard it. And now I know that we are right in our aspirations.
So I'm going to connect that. We have a question coming in from Taki Caxton as well, that really speak to this issue of transition and what are the best strategies for transition. And yet, Mr. President, you know, the transition, there's a momentum that you have that you can leverage politically to, and he's asking about how do you mobilize resources to support transition. And yet what we're seeing in Bosnia is what Timur just said, a sense of apathy setting in. There's not like there's energy and momentum in a transition. We've seen a Bosnia for 25 years right now that's in a difficult spot. What would you advise, Mr. President, answering Ataki's question? What are the best strategies for transition, and how do you mobilize both resources and people to avoid inertia, apathy setting in?
I heard both speakers. I heard Timur in particular. He says he's doing the right thing. You work within existing institutions, political parties, and that's the experience of many other in Western Europe. I remember 40 years ago, I met the youth leaders of the Spanish Socialist Party, the Portuguese Socialist Party. I met the youth leaders of the French Socialist Party. And then some 30 years later, I see the news. Wow, he is now the president of France. Wow, he is now the prime minister of Spain. He's the prime minister of Portugal. So you go into the credible, established parties. Yes, as Timur say, you work hard, work honestly, creatively, be smart. That's why I say study and study. As you work, you continue your study. Study means not only going to university, research, look about other countries, our experiences, our leadership that succeeded, leadership that failed. We don't study only the successful leadership. We study also the failed leaders, why they fail, and so on. Eventually, you will prevail. Eventually, the mood in the party, they realize this young man is what we need. As it happened, the young leaders in Finland, a young woman in her 30s is the prime minister. Or Barack Obama, in his early 40s, became president of the United States. And so opportunities will arise when but very important, use your intelligence, your wisdom, and always in humility. Sincere humility. And that is, for me, the greatest qualities of leaders, for me, is not only that you have a PhD summa cum laude. That might be worthless if you don't have leadership qualities. And some of the greatest qualities of leadership for me is compassion, humility, compassion towards the more vulnerable people, compassion towards the people on the periphery, humility to listen, to learn, and to respect every opinion. These are the two greatest qualities that I think, that humility and the compassion. Because with humility and compassion, we can build better societies, more inclusive societies, more equity economies that have a fair distribution of the wealth of the country, of the world.
I think that's extraordinary advice, Mr. President. So with our time clicking out, I want to close out with Magdalena and Timur on the concept of this crossover initiative and the value. How do you see a pathway forward in Bosnia for those that are active in civil society to shape the political future of the country, and the value you see in this crossover, tapping civil society to help provide governance? But Magdalena, your final word, and then Timur, please.
Invest in yourself, invest in your education, invest in a local community, and we must talk to city mayor, councillors, and other representatives of government. And we talked about problems, and we make projects together.
Thank you, Timur.
If you might just please repeat the question. I was
yes, just the crossover initiative. How do you see for the future of Bosnia, the ability, the power of civil society, those in civil society, how they can play a role in shaping the political future and governance of Bosnia in the future?
I see it as the only possible way, because people here have lost faith into just politics. People here want to work with civil initiatives to do things which are not politically, as we say in my language, colored, which are not politically stained, things which are going to help everyone, the things which are of common usage and of common interest. So I believe that our future is exactly in civil initiatives guiding the politics of the country, since our political system is very complex. And I would just like to close on something that Mr. President inspired me, and that I have learned through my well, compared to Mr. President's career, a very, very short time in politics. No one is completely right, but also no one is completely wrong. So I thank you very much for your words, and I will come out of this live a much, much wiser and much more motivated person. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Timur Magdalena, Mr. President. I think it's that advice, Mr. President, it's a great way to end. You know, here, this project that's been supported by RRI makes me think of Senator John McCain, who was such a leader and champion of democracy and freedom, and also of RRI. And he always urged people to get into the arena. It's easy to sit on the sidelines and throw stones and criticize and just complain. But to roll up your sleeves, to take some responsibility, to have agency, and to get into the arena and do it. And Mr. President, you have shown that path, you've shown that way. Timur Magdalena, you are doing that today. And so I'm going to close out this conversation of the World Movement of Democracy, focused on the Crossover Initiative, with one of my favorite quotes from Margaret Mead: "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed is the only thing that ever has." And so with that, Mr. President, Timur Magdalena from Dili in the Pacific and Asia, to Mostar and Sarajevo in the Balkans, and here in Washington, we're delighted to have you with us as our guest today, and delighted to have our Facebook Live audience. So stay in touch with the World Movement for Democracy as we continue to put a spotlight on this crossover initiative, and look forward to rallying together as the world movement. Thank you so much. Signing off from Washington, I'm Damon Wilson. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you for the invitation.